If you've watched some of my previous videos, you'll probably remember that I've claimed that I'm boycotting Diablo 4 since it's online only. Unfortunately, a good friend of mine ended up buying me the game as a gift during the last Blizzard sale, which forced me into a position where I had no choice but to play it with him. And to make matters worse, now I had to buy another copy for my wife since she generally loves playing Diablo games as well. So I hope I will be forgiven for this. I could simply not say no to him after he spent his money on it. With that in mind, let's see if Diablo 4 is a disappointment, or was I wrong before and the online only actually made the game better? Before we answer that question, let's talk about the game's ultrawide support. Diablo 4 supports 21:9 but not 32:9. So if you should be the owner of a super ultrawide monitor, prepare to play with black bars. From what I've read, 32:9 was actually planned for and enabled during the alpha of the game, but then they realized that the engine was designed in such a way that the mobs would spawn when within a certain range of the player. By expanding the field of view, it made it so that the mobs would appear out of nowhere and therefore negatively impacted the way the game looked. So they decided to limit it to 21:9. They then claimed that it gave an otherwise unfair advantage to players who would play in ultrawide and super ultrawide aspects, which I strongly disagree with, since, as I've stated before, the mobs will still appear at a certain distance, and when it comes to the players themselves, it still doesn't do much because a character cannot shoot beyond a certain range, which is actually limited to roughly the 1080p screen size, meaning that even if you can see more, you can't actually use this advantage to shoot at a player who doesn't see you yet. I mean, you could shoot at him, but the projectiles will never reach that target. They just disappear after they pass a certain distance. But even if that was the case and it was possible to hit people, we can see how the online only thing is already hurting the player experience, and I fear this won't be the last time it does in this game. One of the first things I noticed while playing was that the console players outnumber the PC players by a lot. You can easily see that if you try to talk to people, they just do not write anything. They will emote at you and do all kinds of stuff like that, and I say all kinds, but actually there are just a few emotes at all. But almost none of the console guys have keyboards, and they don't want to type using software methods, so they just don't. They don't type anything, meaning that most of the players you see feel more like bots than anything else. This happens when you create a game which doesn't really know if it's an MMO or just a standard Diablo game. Early on, I found this so annoying that I decided to turn off the crossplay feature. This transported us to pretty much empty servers, which was pretty fine with me, since Diablo, in my head, should not be an MMO anyway. While leveling up, it all felt very natural, but even then you still see the cracks in the facade of the game. Since Diablo 4 has a world that is designed to house many characters and not just you, everything revives very quickly around you. You have these random events which appear at certain points of the map, and one thing we noticed almost instantly was that upon completing one, you can almost immediately repeat it over and over again, since it resets within a minute or so. So you could just stay there and do this all day if you wanted to. Obviously the idea here was that if you did it and another character came, he should also be allowed to do it, which when you think about it is not a terrible idea, but unfortunately if it's just me, it just feels stupid. In addition to all of that, the game has multiple bosses which are impossible to kill alone, unless of course you are an overpowered barbarian with the best gear in the game. Then you can literally kill them in just a few seconds. Mind you, this is not intended, but rather an oversight. I also saw a wizard build which was combined with specific items to achieve literal immortality. That wizard was able to essentially keep his immortality bubble for as long as he wanted. He was absolutely impossible to kill by anything. Normally I'd have no problem with such builds if it was not an always online game, but here it's a whole different story. And speaking of that, again, these bosses that I've mentioned, there are world bosses, there are super strong bosses designed to be killed by groups of people. You're not meant to be able to kill them alone, and this means that you will be forced to look for people if you want to explore all the content. But as I've mentioned before, many of the players, a vast majority of them, are not very social. They don't even type. And in addition to that, if you do type in the chat, there's a trade chat which pretty much covers the whole server. If you type that you need help, or someone says that they need help, which is very rare already, you still have a hard time joining their game because you cannot just click on their name and click join party. What you have to do is add them as friends, and then you could join their party. I know it's not a big deal, you can just add people as friends and delete them afterwards, but why? They're making a game that's supposed to be like an MMO, so make it easier to join other people. And the problems don't stop here. The game now has a giant open map. It features multiple biomes, which is actually nice. But one of the things we noticed very quickly is that everything else repeats way too much. You know how you find these small cellars and caves, sometimes houses, which are like these mini instances, like a tiny dungeon, one room dungeon, offering just a few layouts which repeat ad infinitum. You never stop seeing them. They look slightly different because of the decor, but otherwise the shape of the place, the way it all plays out is pretty much the same. Not that this wasn't something we didn't see in Diablo 3, but since the map is so big here, these things tend to occur a lot, and therefore you notice the lack of variety very quickly. In Diablo 3 they were thinking we have to service this one player who goes through this relatively linear story and these relatively linear maps that were connected, but here it's one giant open world, so people are running back and forth. They have to put more points of interest, otherwise certain parts of the map will not be inhabited at all, and this problem is much more prevalent. It's even more extreme when it comes to the enemies. For the most part, you're gonna be fighting goatmen, and since Diablo aims to be dark like Diablo 2, which actually doesn't appeal to me personally, I prefer Diablo 3's look and slightly more humorous presentation, but this is not it, and here they want to be all serious. So they made all the monsters really demon-like. So they're very angry, they growl, they snarl at you. And guess what? So do the goatmen. They're no longer these funny guys. They're just goatmen that are supposed to be menacing, which they are not. It's just stupid. They're not even funny to listen to. They're just annoying generic demons. And unfortunately, there aren't that many other mobs to see. It's just mostly the same things that repeat. Yeah, each biome tends to have 1 or 2, 3 maybe mobs that are different, but for the most part you feel like you're fighting the same stuff all over the place. It's very annoying. Of course it can't be an online only game without lag, right? And at times the lag got really bad. We would walk and then we'd get pulled back constantly. We died a bunch of times because of lag. Now imagine you want to play a hardcore character. I would never do that to myself, but there are plenty of people who want all the achievements and who really want the additional challenge. If you die with a hardcore character, that's it. You're dead permanently. It would be devastating, just imagine it, since it's not even your fault if lag would end up killing you. And it did us more than once, so why wouldn't it you? And since I've mentioned the map earlier, let's talk about the main and side quests. The game has a lot of those, but with quantity you lose quality, and it's no different here. Diablo 4 simply suffers from a lackluster storytelling experience. The narrative, which revolves around the resurgence of ancient evils and the desperate struggle of humanity to survive, feels uninspired and quite disjointed. The characters lack depth and development, existing primarily as vessels to deliver exposition rather than compelling personalities of their own. Quests often devolve into mindless fetch quests or repetitive dungeon crawls, failing to provide players with a sense of investment in the world or its inhabitants. The game lacks a quest log which shows completed quests, which, in my case, was infuriating since I'm only missing a few side quests in total, but finding them is a nightmare when you don't know the names of every completed quest, so if you look online you gotta just go through all of them again and retrace your steps. It's an insane amount of work and I just was not ready to do it. Had I known this beforehand, I would have written the names down myself, but alas, that information comes a bit late for me. The main quest is okay at best. I did like Lilith as a villain because they've managed to flip everything on its head. The angel appears to be the bad guy and Lilith the demon might actually be good. Mind you, these are simply personal speculations. It's never really clear when you do play through the story. The game throws a lot of questions your way. I feel like maybe DLCs or expansions are going to answer some of them, but probably a vast majority of these will remain unanswered. Unfortunately, the story feels rather unpolished as a whole. And speaking of the story, if you've played Diablo 3, you will know that the whole reason why our character was so powerful there was that we were playing as a Nephilim, which was supposed to be a super rare thing, and I'm not gonna go too much into it. Play the game if you want to find out more, because that is part of the story and I don't want to spoil it. But in this particular game, we're just normal humans, and so is everyone else. But since it's an online game now, the world is roamed by many players, meaning that suddenly many of these normal humans are super strong for no specific reason. So making the game online also messes with its narrative in a major way. In terms of gameplay, we have the whole shebang with the season and of course the season pass. Leveling up the character is quite fun during the first 2/3 of the playtime while you are still exploring the game for the first time. Once you've uncovered the map and done all the main quests, the game simply becomes boring. You can push up to level 100, but you only get skill points up to level 50, and then you only unlock Paragon skill points, which are a nice way to unlock substantial buffs in a grid system. It was surprisingly enjoyable and mostly kept me motivated to play more, but once I hit level 100, all of that goes out the window. Here I would have liked to see something akin to the Paragon system in Diablo 3, where you would unlock a tiny stat boost for your whole account and it went almost infinitely, so it was still very good to continue leveling up. This is an awesome way to keep people motivated. As things are now though, once people reach level 100, they mostly ignore the mobs as much as possible and push for the bosses at the end of the dungeons, because there's no point in wasting time killing mobs when they will most likely not drop anything nice and the experience is no longer a factor. This is a bad thing in my mind and it needs to be rectified. Also, I was shocked to see how incredibly powerful some of these seasonal characters were. This shows me that you can now realistically max out a character within the span of a single season. This is clearly so that you make a new one next season and start over. Rinse and repeat. There's little to no motivation to continue playing in the so-called Eternal Realm, since you miss a lot of the new content anyway, and you have most likely hit the ceiling when it comes to gear during your season. Since they want to sell you season passes, they were ready to screw over their game's gameplay loop just for that. Now let me tell you a bit about the game's strengths. One of Diablo 4's most noticeable one is its visual presentation. From the moment you step foot into the game's world, you're greeted with breathtaking vistas, haunting dungeons, and meticulously crafted character models. The environments ooze with atmosphere, evoking a sense of dread and wonder as we explore the war-torn landscapes of Sanctuary. Whether traversing the desolate wastelands of the dry steppes or delving into the depths of ancient crypts, the game's graphics are undeniably impressive, showcasing that Blizzard still has it when it comes to visual design. However, while the visuals may dazzle the senses, they alone cannot carry the weight of an entire experience. Thinking back to Diablo 3, its music was, for the most part, really bad. There were a few good tracks, but I have a clear memory of its bad ones, sounding mostly like a cacophony of noises. Luckily, Diablo 4 has improved upon that. The music here is quite enjoyable and really fits the themes. In conclusion, Diablo 4 is a visually stunning yet ultimately disappointing entry in the beloved franchise. While it succeeds in capturing the dark and foreboding atmosphere of its predecessors, it falls short in terms of storytelling, gameplay mechanics, and overall depth. As it stands, Diablo 4 may appeal to die-hard fans of the series who crave more of the same, but it is unlikely to win over new players or reignite the passion of longtime fans. Blizzard Entertainment have crafted a beautiful world with Diablo 4, but beauty alone is not enough to sustain a truly legendary gaming experience. And mind you, this game is very far from such a description. And there is one thing to consider here as well. I own Diablo 3 on PC, PlayStation 3, and PlayStation 4. My wife and I played it for a really long time back in the day. Diablo 4 on the other end, we've only played for about 3 weeks and we are already really bored with it. I mean, it's pretty much done. I've never played a Diablo game this little before. It feels like I've already seen everything it has to offer, and that speaks volumes. In fact, I had to insist for my wife to play with me for the last week. She was really bored about 2 weeks after we had started playing. Had I not pressured her into it, she would have been out of that game a week ago. Those weren't 2 weeks of all-day sessions, mind you, but rather 2-3 hours once I came back from work every day. So it's safe to say that Diablo 4 is probably the weakest entry in the series, and I'm afraid the Blizzard's greed is about to destroy yet another otherwise great franchise. Thinking of you, Overwatch. With that having been said, I want to thank you for watching Game Filter. I hope to see you again next time, and until then, have a great day. This is Nino signing off.